Hello everyone, it's good to be back here again with another video. It's a beautiful day here today, very different from yesterday, which was torrential rain here in this little part of Wales where I am, and it was so torrential in the night that I really tentatively went down to the veg garden this morning just to check that all of my peas and my tomatoes and my potato plants were all okay, which thank goodness they were. I hope you're all well and you've all had a lovely week. I am back here again today with a really exciting video, and one that I'm very excited about. So I don't know if I've mentioned this before on YouTube, but I am hoping to get into the swing of doing little tutorial videos. It's one of my wishes to do a series of videos teaching how to make certain things. Not that I'm an expert in any of this, please don't overestimate my knowledge, because I'm definitely not, and I am most definitely still a learner in a lot of things, most things, all things. And I definitely don't want to give the impression that I know very much at all. I can hear my chickens alarm calling. I don't know if you can. I think they're okay. I think maybe they've just laid an egg perhaps, but if it goes on for too long I'm just going to go and pop my head out and check on them. But I think it's probably just an egg. We've got a couple of broody chickens at the moment, and sometimes they have a bit of a tussle over nest boxes. But back to this video. So it's my intention to create some tutorial videos to inspire, hopefully, and maybe teach a few basic skills along the way. Let's see how we get on. I thought this would be a good one to start with. If you've been following along with my Instagram at all, you will have seen that I made recently some bunting with some Sari Silks, and it was such a lovely fun project to do, and it was quite simple to do as well, that I thought this would make maybe a good first tutorial video for me to have a go at. So I've never really done tutorial videos before, so I'll be really interested to hear in the comments below how this lands with everyone. Any feedback would be appreciated because I'm learning the skill of how to break a project down into steps and show it to somebody, demonstrate it in a way that's hopefully easy to understand. And I'm guessing it's going to take me a few goes to get the hang of it, so definitely any feedback very welcome. do let me know. I thought I'd start by showing you the finished piece of what we'll be making in this tutorial, and then walking you through what materials that you would need in order to make this. So I'll start with the Sari Silk. So what I did was I looked online and I bought basically a scrap bag of Sari Silk pieces, and you can look online, there's lots of places you can get these. I did try to source some so that I could offer them alongside this tutorial, but I actually found it quite difficult to source them in bulk, and so I haven't basically. But yeah, just go onto the internet and search for Sari Silk scraps. Isn't that gorgeous? I love that one. It's one of my favourites. I haven't actually used any of that yet because it's one of those ones that's, at the moment, I'm feeling too precious about it. I don't want to use it. And I've got plains and I've got patterns. And so gather together a little bundle of these Sari Silk scrap fabrics. And I'm just going to see what Emmy would like, and then I'm going to come back to you. Sorry about that. It's a few minutes later now. Emmy had rescued a bee from a pot of water and she wanted to show me. And then seeing as I was outside, I went to check on the chickens and they're fine. They're just having a nest box argument. So I told you about the Sari Silk scraps. So you'll need a bundle of those in whatever colourway you'd like to work with. Then, so that takes care of the little triangle pieces. And then you need this ribbon along the top. Now, you can use any kind of ribbon for that. It needs to be, you know, relatively sturdy. You don't really want to use this kind of thin Sari silk fabric. It needs to be something with a little bit of sturdiness to it. You can use, like I say, any type of ribbon. You can use cotton bias binding. That's really good for bunting. What I used here was, alongside my Sari silk bundle, I bought a bundle of Sari silk strips. And these are basically Sari silks that have been cut into strips of about, gosh, I don't know, would you call that an inch wide maybe? But this is not the flimsy Sari silky type of fabric. This is a denser, coarser fabric with a lot more sturdiness to it. And you'll need a length of that, however long you want your string of bunting to be. And you want it wide enough that you can fold it in half and it still be a good enough size to work with. So I'm going to hazard a guess that that is an inch wide. I was just looking for my ruler on my tape measure, but it's not there. So you want something about that kind of width, about an inch wide, so that when you fold it in half, it's still easy to work with. So that's in terms of fabric, that is what you'll need. In terms of equipment, then you'll need a pair of really good scissors, fabric scissors. You'll need some paper that you can cut a template from, and you'll need a needle and some pins and basket to keep it all in if you desire to, and some thread that matches. You may need a couple of different colours depending on how you decide to put this together. So you'll need one colour that will match your overall ribbon that's going along the top, and you'll need colours that match your Sari silk fabric. Unless you want to do contrast stitching, which you could, but for my projects here I've kept the colours, I've blended the colours in. Yeah, so it's up to you. So yeah, so as many colours as you need to fulfill that. Yeah, and then also the other thing you'll need is a little stash of beads. Let me see if I can get this in focus. Little beads and pendants or bells. This one's a bell. I've got pendants here. That one's a leaf. And this one is a different type of bell. So just a little selection basically of beads and pendants and bells for the ends if you want to. What I find is that hanging the beads and the pendants on the end, it gives it some weight so that they hang nicely, because otherwise this material is so floaty that it doesn't always hang down properly. So that's kind of the function, but also it just looks really nice. And I hang this one usually at the top of this door here. This is usually where it's hung, and actually as I open and close that door you hear the slight ringing of the bells, which I really like. It's really nice. So that's all the things that you need. I'm going to pop you overhead now and start talking you through the process of how to put this together. So I've got my things set out on the table here. Sorry for this patch of sunlight. I don't have curtains up at this window yet, but the sun's kind of going in and out behind clouds, so that will come and go. So yeah, I've got my things set out on the table here. Now I've decided with this tutorial not to give you specific measurements to follow, because I think that with a project like this, it's really nice to just bring your own creativity into it. So I'm sorry if you're one of those people who likes specific measurements and things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the measurements that I worked to for this project. So if you're one of those people who wants all the specific sizes, you're very welcome to follow those. But I also just want to encourage you to have a go and just play with the dimensions to just make it your own, because it's a really lovely creative process doing something like this that, you know, there's no rule for how long this strip needs to be or how many triangles you have, or even if they're triangles, if you want to do squares instead, or the spacing between them if you want them close so that they're like touching like that as they hang, or whether you want a space in between each one like I've done. There's really no rules to any of this, and so I really encourage you to play about with this however you want to and make it your own. So I'm going to start by saying choose your piece of ribbon. I'm going to call this ribbon, but yeah, you know what I mean. So choose your piece of ribbon first, and I'm going to tell you in centimetres how long my piece of ribbon is to give you an idea. So just let me sort this out here and I'll measure it. So it is about 115 centimetres long, the one that I've made here. And this is comprised of 5 triangles. So the one that I'm going to make alongside with you for this tutorial, I'm actually making a little bit longer because I've decided that I want 7 triangles on the one that I'm making now. But yeah, like I say, you just do whatever feels right to you. So this one is 115 centimetres long. So yeah, so prepare your ribbon first. Just cut it to the length that you're happy with. Then get your Sari Silk fabric scraps and choose your colourways. So I've kind of gone for a pink and green theme, with a little splash of, there's a little splash of blue in there as well, but it's mostly pinks and greens. And so I've got this little bundle of Sari Silk scraps here. So I'm going to do this demonstration with a plain pink, for no other reason than that's the next colour I need for the one that I'm making. So you've got your piece of fabric. Now it's helpful to make a paper template in the dimension that you want your bunting to be in. It just gives you a regularity of size of the flags. Like I say, you know, like I'm going to keep repeating this throughout the whole tutorial, is just to make it your own. So if you want to do them irregular shapes, please do. I think it would look really nice. You can just freestyle cut them, just knowing that each flag then is going to be unique and individual. As much as I love the creative flow, I'm also a bit of a fan of there being a bit of an order there as well, a bit of order there. So I cut a little template triangle like this, and I just did it quite simply by eye, with a ruler. So I didn't measure the angles. I mean, I wasn't that particular about it, and I think it is slightly wonky, but I quite like that about it. But if you want it really exact, go ahead and measure the angles, and get your perfect triangle that you're happy with. So like I said before, I'll give you the dimensions of this triangle, just so that it gives you an idea if you want to follow this. So it obviously hangs this way. It's got a shorter edge here and the longer sides here. So my shorter edge along here is 13 centimetres and the longer side down here is 15 centimetres, just so it gives you an idea. Okay, so once you have chosen your piece of Sari Silk fabric, you'll place your paper template on and pin it on. Now, because this is a plain piece of fabric, it doesn't really matter how I do, you know, how it's orientated. But obviously if you're using a patterned piece, a patterned piece like this, you might want to place it in a certain way, you know, so that the pattern comes through on the shape in a regular way, or maybe you want it in an irregular way. You also might have a pattern which has, you know, this kind of situation where you might want to put your piece like this so that you are incorporating certain bits of the pattern in a way that you want them to hang. So just, yeah, be mindful of that when you're laying your template. So I'm just going to lay my template quite simply, and I find it easy to pin in each corner, in the 3 corners. I'm just going to make sure you can see what I'm doing. Yeah, centre it a bit more here. There you go. And actually this, because I'm not following a pattern, and this sari has actually been cut in quite a straight way, so I'm actually going to line that up to there to save me cutting along that top edge, and it just saves a bit of fabric there. There's a selve edge down here, which is why I'm leaving a bit of a gap, because I don't really want the selve edge on the corner of my triangle. Need another pin. There we are. And so now that's pinned out, you can go ahead and grab your fabric scissors and cut it out. Now, Sari Silk fabric is really, really drapey. So when you're cutting these out, have it laid on a table like this, and just slip your scissors underneath and keep it laying down flat on the table the whole time, because otherwise you get, it just is very wobbly when you cut it out. So you can now unpin it to release the paper template. There we are, and you've got your triangular piece of bunting there. So just repeat that now with as many of the triangular shapes as you would like to use for this project. I've actually just noticed that it's a bit of an irregular shape. Is it? It is. So I think at some point I maybe have clipped when I was cutting. In fact, I can see where I must have cut out my last one. I've clipped the edge there and actually cut the paper of the template, and so now this one has a bit kind of clipped out of the side there, but I'm actually okay with that. I really don't mind them being a bit irregular and a bit wonky. I quite like that, so I'm going to just leave that as it is. I'm actually going to cut out a second one in this pink, because I actually want 2 in this colourway. And if you line it up carefully enough, what you can do is, where I've cut that one out of here, I can actually just turn it that way and save myself cutting out. But like I say, I mean, it's very much if you don't mind it being wobbly. So I'm just trying to line that up and see if I can get that to work. Or maybe I'll do it like this and then I don't waste that bit. I think that's what I'll do. I'll lay it like this. It's really quite difficult material to work with if you've ever worked with Sari Silk fabric before. It's very slippery and very drapey, and it really is, it's quite challenging. I found it requires quite a lot of patience to work with, and just being okay with it not being perfect, because it just doesn't really hold its shape. It's quite difficult to stitch, and I'm going to show you the technique of rolled hems in a moment, because that's how I have hemmed these. If you don't hem them, they will fray. So it's definitely worth hemming them. It is a challenge to work with, but it's a nice challenge, you know. It's nice to work with different textiles, isn't it, and explore their different properties and things. I'll put these pins back in here. I've got a bit of a pet hate of needles and pins being left around the place. I like them to be put back. I've stepped on too many pins and needles in my life. So I've got my 2 triangular pieces there. So the next thing that we do now that we have all of our triangles cut out, is to hem them with the rolled hem method. So I'm going to try and create a situation where I can sit down to show you this, because I think I'd find that easier, and maybe I can zoom you in a little bit so you can see a bit closer. Okay, so I've got one of these little triangles now. I've got some thread that matches the colour, and I'm happy with that match. This is just regular embroidery thread, and I have split it down from 6 threads to 2. I'm going to thread my needle, and my needle is quite a thin one. So what I find with this fabric is that you can very easily make holes in it. So I don't use a thick needle, I use a very thin one. So consequently it's got a very thin eye. I don't make a knot in the end of my thread either, because again, when I first started making these, I was making a knot, and then I found that as you pulled it through the fabric, the knot would just go right through and leave a hole, because the weave is so loose. So with these little triangles, you don't need to hem the short side, which is the side that will be attached to your ribbon, like this. There's no need to hem that. You only need to hem the long sides. And I find with a rolled hem, it's easiest to work from right to left. So I start with, if I've got my short side up here, I start up in this corner here. So I take my fabric, and the first thing I do is I create a little rolled, a folded hem essentially, but as small as you can manage with this very fiddly fabric. So I just fold it over just a tiny amount, and I just press it with my thumbs. Depending on which piece of silk I'm working on, sometimes it kind of stays, but a lot of the time it doesn't. And then to start, I literally just pass my needle through the silk and do a couple of back stitches backwards and forwards. I try to do about 3, but as I've mentioned a few times, you know, this fabric is so delicate, and I just find that holes are created so easily that sometimes I can only manage 2 before I'm starting to, you know, really damage it. So just see how your fabric behaves. You just want it to be relatively secure in there. I'm going to just trim that tail piece off so that it doesn't get in the way of what I'm trying to show you. So I hope you can see that okay. I'm going to check this piece of footage afterwards just to make sure. So we've got our just narrow folded bit here. So we're going to start by taking our needle and passing it from the front to the back, taking a very small bite from the top of that folded edge. Now you want it to be small enough that it's small and you want it to be big enough that it's not just gonna go through the weave. So it takes a little bit of practice, but after you've done it a few times you'll see what I mean. So below this folded piece then, the edge of my folded piece is just here. I'm going to take a little bite of fabric from underneath that folded piece, just like that, a tiny, tiny bite of just a few threads. And when you're pulling this through, you don't want to pull it tight. You just want to pull it just loose like that. And you do again from front to back, you go through the top folded edge of that hem there. And again, not pulling it tight, just pulling it to. And then you're going to, move the tripod. And then you're going to take another little bite from under here. So you're going below the edge of that fold. And again, pulling it just so. As you are moving along, you're moving this thumb down so that you're creating this fold as you go. So you've always got a folded bit of hem ready for sewing. So I'm just going to do a few of these so you can see. So you're taking a little bite out of that top bit and taking a little bite out of this. Oh, that's probably a bit too big, like that. Okay, and what you should see emerging is you should see a slight zigzag to your stitches. And I usually do about 3 stitches like that before I hold the original place where I first started. Let's see, like the first bit of the first stitch. And then with this thread, you just gently pull. And as you pull, it's like magic. It folds your hem over for you. And it creates this really lovely rolled hem effect. So I'm just going to check that that came out okay on the camera. And if it didn't, I'm going to refilm it. And if it did, then I'm going to just carry on. So it looks to me like that mostly came out okay on the film. It's a bit tricky for me to see because my camera screen is actually pointing away from me, and so it's a bit of guesswork knowing where to hold things when I can't actually see the video that's being taken. So, but it looked okay. There were a few points where it went out of focus. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sit here quietly for the next few minutes and carry on trying not to jog the tripod and doing a few more stitches like this, which I think I will keep in real time so that you can just watch the technique if you need a little bit more time to see what I'm doing here. So I'm just going to do that now. Part of the trick of doing this is keeping your thread at the front of the material, the fabric, and remembering to only do about 3 stitches before you do the magic pull, which was the bit that went out of focus. So I'm going to hope that this is in focus for you now. There we are. And then I just give it a little gentle pull this way, so that I'm not making it, I don't want to make it so tight that it puckers. I just want it to be exactly the right tension. And then you continue again. You can hear Emmy in the background in the kitchen helping herself to some ice cream. We made chocolate ice cream the other day in our ice cream machine. She's just helping herself to some chocolate ice cream because it's actually quite hot here today. It's not, it's not boiling by any standards, but it's warm enough to eat ice cream. So I'm going to have to crouch down like this so I can speak to you. So I've got to the point now, the very point of the bunting. And as you can see, because I'm, going ahead with my thumb and rolling it, how can I do this so you can see? If I carry on like that, I'm going to lose the point. Oh, it's not focusing, is it? There we are. Oh, no, I think maybe it wants to focus on my head instead of the work. Can you see that? So yeah, so because I'm coming towards the end now and I don't want to lose the point, and so what I do is I just sew. I continue sewing until I get to about here, and then what I do is I actually fold this back in on itself like this. It's all a bit fiddly and small, and then I roll the hem like this to come back up the other side, and in so doing creating a bit of a point. It's one of those things that's quite difficult to demonstrate, but when you get to it, when you're actually doing it yourself, you'll see what I mean. So I'm just going to do that now. So having now navigated that end point there, I'm just going to sit here and continue stitching down the rest of that long piece. Long side, I should say. This is such a lovely project to do. A little bit of slow stitching, and it's quite fiddly, so it requires a bit of concentration, so it's definitely not boring. It's something that I really like to do in the mornings. As you may know, I've mentioned a few times that I have a creative practice where I get up really early in the morning, try to get up around 5:30, so that I can sit quietly before everybody else gets up and work on a creative project. There's a little bit more to it than that. I have a bit of a ritual where I often will light a candle and make a really nice hot drink, which is often a cacao, which I make with milk. Take a few moments at the start of the day to do a little spiritual practice, and then I pick up my creative project. And this one I find really great because it's really calming and slow, but so it's got that lovely pace to it, and you're also working with really beautiful tactile materials, and there's also an element of this needing a little bit of concentration, which I just find that I have, like a focus, I suppose, that I find that I have in the mornings, that I don't necessarily have in the evenings. Because in the evenings often I want something that I can do kind of without thinking, because if I've had like a busy day, the last thing I want to do then is sit and do something that requires my attention. So I do find this to be a really great early morning practice. What about you? What do you do when you've got a project going on? What's your favourite time of day to complete craft projects, and do you have specific times of day that you like to do certain things? I'd love to know in the comments below. Let me know. Do you perhaps prefer more challenging things in the evenings? Oh, I've come to a tricky bit now where the silk has frayed, so I'm going to have to fold this over quite a lot, which is fine, but it will give a slightly uneven look to this side. But like I've mentioned before, I actually don't mind. I think that I think this fabric, if you're trying to get it perfect, it could be really frustrating. But I think if you're happy to just let it be handmade and wonky, then actually all of these little quirks where, you know, like where the hem isn't straight, it's kind of weavy, actually all adds to the look of the finished item really nicely actually. So I'm almost there now. And I want to point out as well that as you're stitching, you'll notice that it starts to curl. So it's curling quite a lot. I'm going to bring it closer so you can see. So can you see what I mean about like the edges aren't really straight, they're all kind of wonky, and I'll put that down and hold it like this. So if this was cotton, it would just hang like that, wouldn't it, to a point. But can you see that it's spiraling in on itself like that? And I actually really like that as it is. And I think that if you just sewed it onto your ribbon along the top, actually it would make for a really great textured bunting. But what I found was that I actually did like it to have a little bit of kind of downward pull on this point. It's not massive, but it's just enough for it to just hang, just give it a little bit of weight. And that was why I decided to put beads and pendants on the end, just to give it that weight. I have one over here that, oh, do I? Yes, here, that I've made. And you can see how that hangs a lot more straighter, if you see what I mean, than this one, which has this kind of corkscrew spiral going on. Yeah, so that's the difference. So I'm just going to finish hemming this. So I've now got to the end of this long stretch, and I am just going to show you the finished sewing piece. Here we go. Rolled edge all the way along, so that's the neat edge that you'll see that will be displayed, and this is the rolled edge, which is also very neat, to be honest with you. Oh, is it focusing? I will take some more footage of it so that you can see it properly. To secure my thread, I do what I did at the start, which is just basically make 2, or if you can 3 back stitches over on itself before you trim the thread, and then that is your triangle done. So what you'll need to do now is repeat that procedure for each of your triangles that you're making, and as I mentioned earlier, you can do this as many triangles long as you like. The first bunting that I made that I showed you is 5 triangles wide. The one that I'm making along with you now is 7 triangles wide. And it's good to have an odd number. It just tends to kind of look a bit more balanced. It looks better if there's an odd number. I'm just pulling on that a little to loosen the stitches because I've pulled it a little bit tight. And that is what is quite good about this fabric, is it's quite forgiving in, you can kind of pull it about a bit and to reshape it if it's got a bit out of shape like mine has. I'm going to finish filming here for part 1 of this tutorial because I think this video is getting quite long now, and I'm going to be back next week with part 2, where we will add the decorations at the bottom and attach these to the piece of ribbon that you've chosen, and I'll show you how to do that. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a lovely week. Goodbye.